What's going on, guys? Capine here and welcome back. And in this video I'll be featuring the team that got me to legend and high up on the leaderboards in season 21 of the GOBattleLeague. You may recognize this team from my last video where I hit expert rank, which I'll link down below in the description if you haven't seen it yet. But this video covers a lot of the leads and swaps not yet touched on to help you get an even more in-depth understanding of the team and how to run it. And if there's still something I haven't covered yet between last video and this one, please feel free to ask me in the comments. I'll be happy to help. And with that, let's get right into the battles. Alright, games the first battle, we Charjabug into Jumpluff. Now this is an interesting matchup where we do hit for neutral with the Volt Switches and X Scissors, and they're able to hit for neutral in return with the Fairy Winds and Acrobatics. Now against Jumpluff, I do like to no-shield the first move just in case they are on the Aerial Ace and Shadow Ball. I want to make them prove that they are on the Acrobatics. So I do let that go. They are on the Acrobatics and that's okay. That's good for information to have. So I will go for X Scissor number 1 and X Scissor number 2. This won't quite KO. And here, the reason why I like to no-shield the first Acrobatics and shield the second move is because 90 to 95% of the time, if your opponent knows what they're doing in this matchup, they will go for a second Acrobatics there. My opponent makes a very nice bait. I guarantee you they knew what they were doing in this matchup. They just made a very incredible bait call there. So props to them. But an Aerial Ace won't KO from that range. So most of them will go for an Acrobatics to guarantee that KO or the shield from you. So that's why I like no shielding the first and shielding the second. In this specific matchup, they make the nice bait. Doesn't matter since I do reach that X Scissor to KO them anyways. They come in a Charjabug and that's fine. I bring in my Gastrodon, and the Morpeko in this cup, I want to say about like 50% of them running Seed Bomb, 50% of them are running that Psychic Fangs. So you know, it's a tough call to make, so that's why I gave up that first shield there on the Gastrodon. And since I realized that they weren't on Grass Knot, then you can play it out from there, you know, not really being threatened to give up a shield. My opponent swaps into the Shadow Kingdra. I come into my Creedilly. I'm just going to go for the Grass Knot right away. I'm going to force that KO, bring back in the Morpeko. They get the Thunder Shock down. And since previously they showed to me that they weren't on Seed Bomb, this is a win. Since they do go for the Aura Wheel there, we are able to hang on as it is single resisted, and we're able to get the Body Slam for the KO. GG's to my opponent. Next battle, we lead Charjabug into Charjabug the Mirror. Now this is actually a very interesting situation. You may think that winning CMP in this situation is advantageous for you, and it's really not. So like, I would honestly recommend running the highest stat product total Charjabug possible you can in this cup, because if you ever come across the mirror situation on the lead like this, winning CMP is actually not advantageous for you, because most Charjabug leads have a similar back line to this one or something along that same realm. So therefore, an energy lead on your Creedilly is actually going to be more advantageous than getting Switch. And in this situation, we both had the move, but both my opponent and I overfarmed, leading to the simultaneous KO because we're both trying to get an energy lead on our Creedilly. So in this situation, Charjabug lead, Switch you do not want. You want the energy lead instead. So always make sure to overfarm. If your opponent throws, that's perfect. You will Bullet Seed down with your Creedilly, and that will set you up into an amazing spot. GG's to my opponent that one. Next matchup, Mantine Lead. Now this one's less about a Mantine lead as opposed to a Gastrodon swap. You may think this is pretty cut and dry, but it's not. Gastrodon isn't actually that bad into Creedilly. So if you see a Gastrodon save swap, you have to immediately bring in your Creedilly, and you have to be the first one to fire off a Grass Knot before they reach an Earth Power. You want to force that shield from your opponent before they force it from you, because if your opponent lands an Earth Power, now they're actually in the driver's seat and able to force switch advantage, even though your Bullet Seeds are dealing double super effective damage. So that's why I'm saying you got to be quick on your swap. Gotta land that Grass Knot. They shield, you shield, they let it go, you know, then they're dead and you don't have to worry about it. In this matchup, my opponent concedes, so GG's. Next battle, Gastrodon Lead terrible lead, we're going to swap into that Credilli. My opponent then swaps into a Dewgong. So this is in relationship to both a Gastrodon lead, where you're going to swap straight into your Credilli, and then a Dewgong counter swap into your own Credilli. You're going to go for the Rock Slide right off the bat. That will most likely force a shield from your opponent, since they are a debuffer and they want to debuff your attack before they take damage from you. And then next, I do recommend going for Rock Slide, right? It takes 2 moves to KO the Dewgong anyways. So if they do shield your second move, that's perfect. It's a cheaper one. But if they let it go, now you're in a great spot, because then you'll be able to KO it with these moves before without getting ice sharded down. So here I do go for that second Grass Knot. They shield it, or that second Rock Slide, and they shield it. And not only do I read the first Grass Knot to do heavy damage, but I read the second Grass Knot to KO it. So that's really how you want to play out that matchup, is land the Rock Slides to get the shields or do some chip damage. And then later on in the match, after they've already applied that Icy Wind debuff, is when you want to land those Grass Knots to KO that Dewgong to maintain that switch advantage. Now here, my opponent has a Tox Specs. I have the Gastrodon on it, and that's just a driver's seat win. I swap out of my Gastrodon there just because I won't be able to reach another Earth Power before they reach a move. So I do want to store it with that HP left, as well as bringing my Charjabug, knowing that I can tank that brine and get a full entire farm down. So now I can spam off these X Scissors against the Gastrodon. First X Scissor doesn't land, and now the second one will come through to take it out. And down goes the Gastrodon. So that's a GG's. Good game to my opponent. Next battle, we lead Charjabug into Abomasnow. Now these are an interesting lead. Both the non-shadow and shadow played a little differently. Against the non-shadow, I like to fire off my X Scissor right away. As soon as you get it, doesn't matter. Your opponent is most likely not going to swap to catch that X Scissor if they're staying with the Abomasnow. Regular tends to be on Icy Wind as opposed to Weather Ball. This one's on Weather Ball. But if this one's on Icy Wind, how you want to play it is by playing the one shield scenario. That way you get switch advantage, or if your opponent wants to get switch advantage, you bring in Gastrodon once your Charjabug goes down, and you just mud slap it all the way down. Like, your opponent's going to reach an energy ball or an Icy Wind, which you'll just shield with your Gastrodon, and what your opponent comes with there, you'll judge whether you want to switch out to reset that debuff or staying with your Gastrodon. But either way, Abomasnow Lead, your Gastrodon tends to shred their back line. So that energy advantage you get from your Gastrodon comes in clutch. If you're facing a Weather Ball, non-shadow Abomasnow, you just want to play out the zero shield scenario. The zero shield scenario is the only shielding scenario that your Charjabug wins in the lead. So by playing out the zero shield scenario, you're setting yourself up for success there. And if your opponent gives up a shield, kind of the same situation there. Like, you can survive 2 Weather Balls, you'll get off that second X Scissor regardless, kind of thing. So like, you'll come in with your Gastrodon and then mud slap it down there and get a massive energy lead regardless. GG's to my opponent. Next battle, Charjabug into Shadow Abomasnow. Now this is even a more dominant matchup than the non-shadow version, because X Scissor basically one-shots it. And since all non-shadow are on Weather Ball, you don't have to worry about the Icy Wind debuff. You can just go for these X Scissors, tank their first Weather Ball, go for that X Scissor. If they let it go, bam, you're perfect. You get switch advantage. If they shield it, you'll just shield in return, and then go for your next X Scissor. Now in this situation, I do overfarm to fire off the X's right before they reach their next Weather Ball, but my opponent swaps. We're a little patient. We don't let them make that catch, and now we can bring in our Gastrodon to punish this Tentacruel safe swap. We do reach the Body Slam. That's enough to take out the Tentacruel from that health range. They come back with the Abomasnow, and now we just got to make sure we throw in good timing here. We have a lot of energy, 1 Mud Slap and then the move, or 3 Mud Slaps and then the move. Now we land that first Body Slam. My opponent doesn't want me to make a second Body Slam, otherwise I would be able to KO the Abomasnow. So I let the Gastrodon go down. I come in my Charjabug and I throw the X-Scissor right away, since the Abomasnow was extremely close to a move and I want to take them out before they reached it. But my opponent made a very nice read. They swapped into their Quagsire to catch the X-Scissor, and now they are able to reach a Stone Edge against my Credilli, but we're still in a good spot. We bring in our Credilli, we go for that Grass Knot. We go for the Grass Knot there because Rock Slide wouldn't be quite enough to KO, and just in case my opponent wanted to call a bait, we wanted to guarantee that KO. My opponent does shield, so we will shield in return. And now from that range, that is X-Scissor, that is Rock Slide range, excuse me, as we do land the Rock Slide to KO the Quagsire, and then we insta swap into our Charjabug to KO the Abomasnow with the stored X-Scissor that we have. GG's. Next battle, Charjabug into Shadow Quagsire. Terrible lead, we're going to swap into the Credilli right away. And now, in this scenario where it's like a Mudboy lead or something of the sort, and you swap into your Credilli, you don't necessarily need switch advantage. You just want to make sure your Credilli can either set you up for 1, switch, it's perfectly fine, or 2, some sort of shield advantage, or massive energy lead on your Charjabug. This mid game against the Mudboy lead is very important. You want to be able to make sure you can give yourself an advantage in one way or another. You never want to give up a shield where your opponent gives up a shield and then you go down where your Charjabugs then gets like chipped and is able to get like minimal energy in return. That's like no bueno. You want to be able to give yourself some sort of advantage one way or another. But in this situation, my opponent brings in a Charjabug, and with an Energy Lead Credilli, this is flippable. So we're going to play that. We're going to get our Charjabug off of their Gastrodon and set ourselves up for success here. So we do play out the 2-shield scenario. They come in with a Gliscopod trying to get the Shadow Claw farm down. Fortunately, they do not get it as we reach a Rock Slide. We can bring our Charjabug into that. It's to swap into our Gastrodon as they bring in their Shadow Quagsire, and from here, this game is just over. We tank that first Aqua Tail, no problem. We will tank the second Aqua Tail, no problem as well. Land this Earth Power. I thought right away, honestly, I probably should have thrown another Mud Slap in the move, not just for good timing purposes, but to allow my Gastrodon to take extra Shadow Claw damage. So the Gliscopod, just in case it gets the farm down, won't necessarily reach 2 liquidations against my Charjabug. But either way, in this situation, my Gastrodon was able to hang on and reach a Body Slam to KO that Gliscopod. GG's to my opponent. Next battle, Charjabug into Ferrothron. This is a fantastic lead. This is exactly where you want to see it. The entire moveset of Ferrothron is walled by the Charjabug here. So we're going to stay in, just make sure we throw in good timing there. And now my opponent swaps out into a Typhlosion. So for a Typhlosion counter swap, you're going to want to come in with your Gastrodon right away. And you're just going to want to Mud Slap it all the way down. Like, they're going to reach a Blast Burn. That's going to do a lot of damage. As you'll see here, my Gastrodon's very low in the red, but we leave with a ton of energy stored, where against the Ferrothron, we do a decent amount of chip damage back to it there. And now this basically puts it in just 1 X-Scissor range instead of 2 from the normal. So it sets you up for success in that kind of situation. Now my opponent swaps into a Shadow Alolan Marowak. We'll insta swap into our Credilli, and we're just going to fire off these Rock Slides, right? Like, that's all we need to do, strip the shields and set us up for a backline sweep. Now, since we have 2 shields, I do expect my opponent to go for a Bone Club bait. If they go for a Shadow Bone, that's perfectly fine. I'll still be able to reach another Rock Slide to force that final shield, and then Charjabug will be able to finish off the Marowak as well as that Ferrothron. But because they went for a Bone Club there, thinking I have 2 shields, like, surely I'll bait, right? Excuse me, shield their bait. Well, we don't. And that essentially just seals the win for us as our opponent does concede. GG's. Next battle, Charjabug into Shadow Gator. Now, this is an interesting lead here. You do want to play the Zero Shield scenario just because of how much the Shadow Claws and Hydro Cannons chunk. So we're not threatened here by the first Hydro Cannon. But what we are threatened by is that Incinerate by the Shadow Typhlosion, as we lose all the energy on the Charjabug. Fortunately, we do have the Gastrodon to tank this energy from the Shadow Typhlosion. And again, we saw how much that Shadow Blast Burn did earlier. So in this scenario, I will give up a shield and just let my Gastrodon reign free against the rest of my opponent's team. But generally against a Gator lead, you're gonna want to play it out the same way I did, except in that last scenario where you saw me get locked into that Volt Switch and then get taken out by that Incinerate from the Typhlosion. That's kind of like a good learning situation there, where now in the future, I'm going to wait and sit there, see that Shadow Claw come through, or see that switch by my opponent, and then react from there. So that's kind of one of those good situations to do, where if you see that Gator lead, your Charjabug's in a already advantageous position, but your opponent tries to pull a move like that, you will now be prepared for it. My opponent has that Morpeko. I decide to let my Credilli go, knowing that my Gastrodon will be able to clean the game from there, as it does, and that is a good game. GG's. Next battle, Charjabug into Unova Stunfisk. Terrible lead. We're going to swap straight into that Credilli, as we do have two better answers for it in the back. And they bring in a Shadow Gator. Now, Shadow Gator here, it's fantastic. That's perfect. We will either be able to get shield advantage or switch advantage here. And that's exactly what the Credilli Safe Swap has been designed to do in this cup. So we do go for the first Rock Slide that gets a shield. We do go for the second Rock Slide. This isn't enough for a Grass Knot. My opponent knows that, so let it go. But that's kind of the trick here. You're baiting them into letting it go. Because if you have at least a decently high-ranked Credilli, you will survive the Hydro Cannon and the Shadow Claws enough to get the Bullet Seed down and leave with a move to threaten whatever they come in with. My opponent does a fantastic Peekaboo play here, coming with the Ufisk to for me to throw that Grass Knot, so then they can then catch it on their Talonflame, which they execute perfectly. But we have the Charjabug for it, so we just come in with it, apply this Volt Switch damage, go for these Discharge, get the shields. We do give up a shield first, just because we don't want a healthy Talonflame on our Gastrodon, knowing that, hey, you know what, going down a shield here is perfectly fine. Just because even down a shield, Gastrodon can perfectly handle this Ufisk. So in that mid game against the Shadow Gator, when you're able to get that advantage of either switch or shield, you just run with it like we did here. So we have our Gastrodon on the Ufisk. Mud Bomb does pitiful damage. So we don't even need to go for the Earth Power here. We can just go for straight Body Slams, as at this point my opponent has to shield it. Otherwise we can just Mud Slap down. So first Body Slam is shielded, second Body Slam is reached before they reach yet another Mud Bomb. And even though Ufisk is bulky, it's not bulky enough to tank a Body Slam from that range as it goes down, and that is a good game. Next battle, Charjabug into Shadow Kingdra. Now this is a fantastic lead. It may not seem like it, but almost all Kingdra or Shadow Kingdra leads have a Toxapex in the back. If it's not all, it's something like 90%. I don't know. It's a lot. So this is a fantastic lead for you to see. Shadow Kingdra lead plays a little bit differently than regular Kingdra, which you'll see in the next battle. But in the Shadow, you want to throw 4 Volt Switches and then go for the X Scissor. Doing so, going for the X Scissor, like after 4 Volt Switches, it's still before they reach that Octazooka, but it also kind of watches out for the catch if your opponent goes for it as soon as you get the move. But once you land that X Scissor, you're perfect, because you know your opponent lets it go. You can farm down, or if they do shield it, you can then no shield the Shadow Kingdra's move, forcing them to go for an Outrage. If they don't go for an Outrage and go for an Octazooka instead, you will survive that and reach a second X Scissor, of which at that point you've basically already won the match if that happens. So if they go for the Outrage, that's perfectly fine. You can come in with your Credilli like I did in this match. Otherwise, if they go for that Octazooka, like I said, you're in that driver's seat to begin with. So here's that Toxapex right on cue. Your opponent sees the Charjabug lead, They think their Toxapex is safe in the back. It is not, as you have two fantastic answers for it and one neutral. As I said in the first video, this team was basically built to counter Toxapex. So anytime you see it in a situation like that, you are good to go. GG's. Next battle. Here's that regular Kingdra I was talking about. You're going to stay in here, and now you play this one a little bit differently. You throw the X-Scissor after 4 Volt Switches, same as the Shadow Kingdra Lead, except what you do differently here is you're going to shield their move. Your opponent knows with the non-Shadow Kingdras that the only way they're going to KO your Charjabug is with an Outrage. So you play to that scenario. If they do go for the Outrage, you get the Volt Switch down, which is amazing for you since you leave with all that energy. And here my opponent comes in the Shadow Jumpluff. I swap into my Credilli. Honestly, the better play is probably just to stay in with your Charjabug, so you can chip it with those X-Scissors and then come with your Credilli. Here I Insta Swap. Not the smartest of plays, but fortunately my opponent stays in with a Jumpluff, so it ends up working out, right? But like I was saying, that difference between the Shadow Kingdra and the regular Kingdra, Shadow Kingdra, you no shield it, force them to go for that Outrage, where if they do, you can then come with their Credilli after. If they don't, you'll be able to land that second X-Scissor. Regular Kingdra, give up a shield because your opponent knows that they have to go for that Outrage to KO, and that kind of works in your favor a little bit there. And just like clockwork, what do you know? Kingdra Lead, they're gonna have a Toxapex behind it. As they go in, I'm not quite able to reach a discharge. I was hoping my opponent gave a shield there to it. Doesn't matter either way, as we do have that Gastrodon, and when my opponent sees it, they do concede. And now here is me claiming a 4-1 set I had to reach Legend rank with an ELO of 3009, where we are now going to take a look at the Legend pose for the season. As we do select it, the Grimsley pose, putting a little hand back in style, saying, "Not today, opponent. We are going to be the victor on this momentous occasion." Honestly, it's an okay pose. Ain't got much more to say about it than that. But either way, hopefully this video was very informative to you, where if you still have any questions between last video and this one, again, please feel free to ask away in the comments. I love to help out, but I did try my best to explain how to play out more of the common leads and swaps you will see in this cup. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. I really do appreciate you. If you enjoyed it, please drop a like, subscribe, and comment down below. I'd love to hear what you have to say. And with that, I'll catch you in the next one.